Hello, welcome to Inspiring Women with ADHD. I am Renee Allen, the host of this podcast, and I am so excited to be here today. Today, I am talking about perfectionism, and it's something that I really need to tune into because it shows up in a lot of places in my life. And I don't know, I think at different phases of our lives, we might see it in different ways. You might think, I want my room to be a certain way, or if I look up at a picture on the wall and it's a little bit crooked, can I sit there relaxed, or do I need to go and change it and make it right? At your own house, that's easier to do. Have you ever been in a situation where you're somewhere else and you see that and you think, I want to go fix that? And maybe it's not really your thing to do, but you aren't resting until you see that. So that's one way you might have some need for things to look just right, be just right. Or have you ever been in a class, like maybe it's a Sunday school class at church or a class at school, maybe it wouldn't happen in college as much, but someone's writing on the board and they spell a word wrong? That is really hard for me to look at, to see that word, and I want them to change it. And sometimes they might say, oh, is that spelled right? And then somebody might say, no, you do this. But other times they just leave it and you think, can I sit here relaxed with this not being quite right? It's just a weird thing. But how perfectionism interrupts more so, like in a day-to-day way, is with the tasks that you do, the normal things that you do, the work that you do. And you might find yourself not completing something because it's not up to your standards. It might not be up to somebody else's standards. That's not as much of a thing of perfectionism because you might have a boss that needs it to be a certain way. That's meeting the goal of that job or that work that you have to do. But this perfectionism is internal. It is what you have in your mind of a way something needs to be done. And for the purpose of this podcast, I'll have that be the way that you need to get something done, not the way that you think somebody else needs to get something done. Like for me, looking up at a board with the word spelled wrong, that is what I think they need to do. Maybe they don't think that matters. Maybe they don't think that matters. And actually, this does show up in other ways too, in conversations. If somebody's telling a story, an experience or something, like your husband, your best friend or whoever, and they're telling the story and they're deep in telling that story and they don't get part of it correct. Maybe they have the date wrong or how many years ago it was. I used to do this a lot with my husband where I would think, oh, no, wait, that was 5 years ago, not 3 years ago. And he would think that doesn't matter. It's interrupting me to share that detail with everyone. Sometimes it does matter, but that's a different podcast of how our need for something to be right might affect our relationship with someone else. But for this podcast, I'll try to keep to the topic of how it just affects us internally, what we do and what we decide is important. So just even noticing when you're being perfectionistic, there's different ways to see where it's getting in the way. And one of those is feeling paralyzed. You avoid starting a task because you're afraid that you won't be able to do it right. It won't be perfect. You don't feel ready to do it. You don't have the full amount of time. You don't have all the right materials. And sometimes that might be important, like cooking something, you might want all the ingredients. But sometimes you're just frozen. It's that overwhelm that happens. You procrastinate it, you put it off, or you never do it because you're not quite sure how it's going to work out. You're not quite sure you can do it right. And that can stop you from progressing because you're being a perfectionist, you're not progressing. Another thing that might get in the way and show you that this is happening is that you're overthinking the tiny little details. You're thinking of the little things that might not work out well, or might not be in place when that's not really affecting the outcome of it actually getting finished. Let's take making a podcast, for example, if you want to make a podcast someday. When I first thought of making a podcast, I looked into what you need, the basics. And unless I had what I thought was really good, I didn't want to do it. Unless I could wrap my head around every little detail and see how it was going to turn out. And if I had what I needed, I wouldn't do it. And so I ordered a little kit with a microphone and this and that. It sat in my closet for about, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. And I ended up returning it. I ended up calling Amazon and said, I know it's past the, the time, but can I send this back? Because by then I don't know, I had decided to use another microphone that I'd bought for my Zoom classes or something, which isn't actually what I ended up using. But we focus on the little details of do I have the right equipment? Do I have exactly what I need? Whatever is the best. And maybe it isn't the best. Maybe you don't have enough money to have the best equipment or the best running shoes, but can you start running without that? Or can you go on a walk? Do you have to have everything in place to be able to start on a goal? Another thing that might happen is, let's say you're making a craft or something that you want to look just right. So I like making bead bracelets. They're not that expensive, especially when you get the beads half off at the craft store. And sometimes I'll get the whole bracelet made. Doesn't take that long. I'll make it, I'll look at it, and I'll see one of the beads that I put on early, and there's a knot at the end of that, looks a little bit too much like the one next to it, and I wanted it variated or variegated or whatever. I wanted the pattern to be a little different. I'll look at it and think, no, I think I should change that. And I'll take the whole thing apart, do it again, look at it. And I know there are ways to set it up to be able to see what it looks like before you do it, but for some reason I don't do that. But I'll look at it and think, does that really matter? Just tie the knot and have your bracelet made. It's fine. You're not even going to see the bottom of it when it's on your wrist. But I'll spend 3 or 4 times as long making a bracelet because I have some idea of some restriction, some little perfectionistic rule in my brain that's not satisfied. And maybe I'm just not resting enough in my brain. I don't know. Maybe I'm being too picky. But a lot of times, our own standard of what we do, we just never meet it. We just never meet it. Whereas somebody else might look at it and say, oh, that's so pretty. That's so great. They're not finding the same flaws that we do. They're not thinking it's not good enough. And I'm doing this when I'm making videos for my courses. Sometimes I'll make a video and I'll think, oh, I shouldn't have said that. And as long as I keep doing that, as I keep correcting myself and making myself do it over and over again, some people might think, oh, that's part of the process, but it also can paralyze the process. It can make it so you don't actually complete it, or you're not able to do nearly as much because you've spent 10 times as long trying to make something perfect that probably nobody else would find a flaw with or think is not good enough. Another thing that gets in the way where we have this perfectionistic mindset is that you fear what somebody else is going to think about it, what their judgment might be, what their criticism is of it. Maybe you're just trying to choose what to wear and you're going to go to the store or you're going to go to a football game. I don't know where you go, what you do. I don't go as many places as I used to do too. And I live in a city now that has a big college football team. So but I actually don't do that often, but it's really fun to plan out what you're going to wear. But if you start thinking, oh, if I wear this, would this person think that? Would that person think that? They're imaginary thoughts, for one thing. They're probably not thinking any of that, but it can get overwhelming. And sometimes I'm getting dressed and I just choose things, put it on, and go. Other times I have a pile of what I put on, looked at, and change my mind on, not just because of my standard, but what I think somebody else might think. And that gets in the way of, one, my closet being clean, two, my mindset. It can just get overwhelming. It can get distressing. It can make you stop doing what you're working on because you're worried what someone else is going to think, or you just don't finish it. Let's say you want to plan a baby shower for somebody, but then you're thinking, well, my house isn't this, or I don't know if I can cook as well as this other person did. And so that fear of criticism is making you not do something because you think it won't be good enough. Another thing is just not being willing to delegate. Maybe you have a high standard of doing something. Oh my goodness, have you ever done this before? Where, let's say you load the dishwasher and you don't want to be the one who always loads the dishwasher, but someone else loads it and you think, I don't know why they put the bowl in there like that. It's not going to wash very well. And so you end up correcting it. Or there might be something that you could delegate to somebody else, but you don't like the way they do it, or you don't trust that they'll do it to the standard that you have. And that's something that may be a struggle to let go of. Another thing is just the unrealistic standard. Your standard's so high, it's so impossible to reach that anything else feels like a failure. And so you're not even going to start. It might not even be a little detail, it might not even be a criticism, but you only want to do it if you could do it as well as this. And then you just don't even go for your dream, go for this great idea that you have. Because I don't know if you realize this, but when you have ADHD, you have some struggles, you have some challenges, you have some things that get in the way. You also have some gifts. And one of those gifts, if you're somebody who has lots of thoughts all the time, is also problem solving and ideas and creativity. And it may not be in every area of creativity. I love to write. I majored in English. I could never write a novel because I'm not a creative writer. I'm just not I can't make up a story. Like when my children were little, I'd have bedtime where I'd go I have 6 kids. So each child had a different day of the week that I'd go into their room and talk to them and tell them a story. And then I had one day, I guess that wasn't a day that I did that, but I would want to tell, a lot of times I'd say, tell me a story. It was kind of a once upon a time, and I try to make something up, and I just wasn't good at it. One of my daughters is really good at that. I couldn't. I'd have to think of something that happened that day. And once upon a time, there was a little boy who was 5 years old. And I'm saying this to my 5-year-old son because I couldn't think of anything beyond that. And they probably still liked it. Thankfully, I wasn't a perfectionist about that and didn't think, well, no, I can't tell you one because I don't know how to tell stories. I'm not good at that. But you do have a creative mind, even if it's not creative at everything. And you can do fabulous things, but you might have these great ideas and then start to think, but wait, I don't know how to do this, or wait, I probably won't do that well. And so your goal to have it be so great is getting in the way of fulfilling your idea. And sometimes you're afraid to try new ideas. Yeah, I'm that way sometimes too. And it may be true that you're not good at everything you try, but sometimes when you try something new, you'll really find joy in it, even if it's not perfect, or even if you look like you're not doing the greatest job. Let's say you wanted to ice skate, and you've never ice skated. That's not going to be easy. If you haven't done it, your ankles aren't going to know how to have that control. Even if you've roller skated, did you roller skate when you were younger? We had a roller rink, and we also went ice skating every once in a while when we traveled, but ice skating was always harder because it took more of that ankle control. Whereas my kids, and maybe if you're younger than I am, they rollerbladed more than they ice skated because rollerblades were a thing. And so they're more comfortable with rollerblades. It's not like I'm really good at any of this, but if you try something new, it might be embarrassing if you're on that bunny hill at this ski slope and other people are really good at it. I've never been good at skiing. I've never been able to do moguls in the steep hills, and I haven't tried it actually in probably 30 years. But in the times that I have gone skiing, I found a lot of joy in it. It's beautiful. It just feels like you're floating to be on the snow. And I got to have that experience, even though I didn't meet the standard, or I might have looked like I wasn't doing that well when I wiped out. Even the best wipe out, right? If you ever notice you don't want to do something unless you can do it completely, that's also perfectionism. Let's say you want to clean a closet, and unless Oh my goodness, I'm laughing because I'm thinking, this is me. I'm raising my hand right now. Now, it doesn't just have to be the time, but if I don't have the brain power to clean the closet completely, I don't want to do it at all. Like if I have a pile of clothes there because I let them pile up, I wasn't keeping up on hanging things back up or putting things away all the way. I don't want to just put those things away. I also want to look at each shelf there and clean out the shelf. I want to do all the details. And sometimes that mindset gets in the way of getting any of it done. So sometimes you have to tell yourself, it's okay if I just get part of it done today, at least that's something. And that's helped me a lot with laundry lately because I'll look at it and think that might take a day or two to fold all that, get it put away or whatever. And so I'll let it sit for another month and then it takes longer than a day or two. And I was just surprised last week. I thought just start working on, doing this laundry, watch some TV. And I got it done within an hour or two. I was so shocked. I thought I'd, make a little bit of headway and then the next day make a little more. And by then get distracted and do something else and then it would build up again. But I actually had clean space in my room and my closet. Actually still do. And if I hadn't had that ability to think, just do a little bit, even if you can't do all of it, it wouldn't be clean right now for sure. For sure. Another thing with perfectionism is if you find that you're seeking validation, you're relying on somebody else to say, yeah, that looks great in order to feel satisfied with your work, then you probably have a fear of it's not perfect, it's not right, it's not right. And you know what? In a way, this is natural for us. We should be able to tell ourselves it's good enough. But I really don't think if you ask somebody else for their approval, that's a bad thing. I mean, not that you're saying, hey, will you approve this? But if you say, what do you think about this? I mean, I've done that before because being older and my girls are in their 20s and 30s, I'm not as aware of fashion. I'm not even probably anywhere close to fashion. But every once in a while, I'll have an outfit that I think I'm going to wear this today. And I'll think, is it even close to being in style? And I'll send a picture of it on the hanger and say, what do you guys think about this combination, this skirt with this top? And, oh, yeah, Mom, that's cute. I would wear that. Okay, good. Or you should wear that. I mean, maybe they wouldn't wear it, but, that looks great. That's something that I would buy. And so, yeah, sometimes approval's actually helpful. And if you find yourself really stressed when you're working on something, we're supposed to have joy in life, right? If you find yourself stressed while you're working on something because you're just thinking, this isn't right, this isn't right, this isn't right, this isn't right, and it's affecting your well being, then you might need to question, why am I so hard on myself? Why do I have this expectation? I do question myself on that quite often. I'll just stop and think, I think you're the only one who cares about this. You're the only one that's setting this goal for yourself. Just let go of it. Give yourself a little bit of a break here. And even if you feel guilty for not being productive, if being productive is what makes you feel good about yourself, if you feel better when you've gotten something done or when you're doing something, I think part of that's natural. We must get some endorphins of, yes, I did this, it's that accomplishment thing, and we feel great about that. But if you're not doing as many things as you think you should have done, that's also your own standard of looking around at the end of the day and thinking, I wanted to get so much done and look, I didn't get that much done. And that can be really difficult because life isn't easy and there's a lot that we need to do. And we have a lot of distractions, obviously, and we have a lot of responsibilities. And so if you're finding that you're not satisfied with what you've done, maybe every once in a while, maybe that's okay. But if that's your mode, your way of ending the day, then that may be another indication that you have this idea of what your day should be. And it's never going to be good enough. It's never going to be good enough. I remember one time my friend told me, because she used to do this little system. It was called Fly Lady. Do you remember that? It was called, like, the website was flylady.net. And they had this whole card system of all the things that you do. This is what you do weekly. This is what you do daily. This is what you do monthly. And if you organize them in your little card holder, in your little box, and every day you just pull out those cards and do those things, you'll always have everything be clean and organized and stuff. And she said she got to a point where every drawer and every closet and everything was clean. But she also had 5 children, so it didn't always stay that way. But she said when she'd want to show people, like, look, everything's all perfect and organized. And it just felt so good. And in a way, yeah, that feels good because maybe clutter kind of clutters with our brains and stuff. But we want to be that happy all the time if we can. We want to feel happy with what we've done when not everything's all done at the same time. Does that make sense? That we don't have to meet the standard of, I got so much done and that's so great, I got it all done. It's nice to be able to complete goals. It's nice to be able to do what we need to do. But we also have people in our lives. We have things that happen that make it so that things don't always go as planned. And maybe some things take longer to do than we thought. And we need to allow for those imperfections in life so that we're not frustrated at the end of the day or frustrated throughout the day. That can happen too. So, what are some ways that we can combat this tendency to have that perfectionism, that standard of it needs to be this way? Whether it's because we think it does or we think somebody else is going to think it's not right. One is to set goals that are more realistic and to be okay if those goals aren't met in the way we set out for it to be. It really helped me, even just with, I know dieting is not supposed to be the nice word that we say anymore. Like, it's not a diet, it's a change in the way I'm eating, or it's my nutrition plan. But I found in, living years and years and years in the roller coaster dieting world, that used to be a thing, that there's always a new diet coming out and you try that and you'd stick to it for I don't know how long, a day, a morning, a week, whatever it was. The goal was usually so unrealistic that it was hard to maintain. And even when I found nutrition plans, people I followed, nutritionists, books I read, I would still allow myself some grace in there. And I would have the goal, even when I did intermittent fasting, I would have the goal to be, I think it's a 16-8, 16 hours of fasting, 8 hours of eating, the 8-hour window. That was what I really wanted to do. But I decided when I started it that I would have a hard time doing it unless I allowed myself some grace there. So I told myself, start out with 14-10, see how you do, see if you can ease into 16-8. There may even be days that you do 12-12. And I got into the 16 hours of fasting, the 8 hours of eating really quickly, and it became easy for me. But I still had that mindset of, I can be realistic here. It doesn't have to be the same time frame all the time. I can cut into it sometime if there's a day that, I end up doing a 14-10, or we're going out to dinner with some friends, I'm going to eat later. Doing that made it so I could be really successful at intermittent fasting because my goals were more realistic. They fit in with my life better, and I didn't beat myself up about any of it because I gave myself permission to do that from the beginning. And having goals that you can live with is really helpful for having consistency, having joy in your life, but being able to attain things, giving yourself grace here and there whenever you can. And also just knowing that making mistakes is a part of life. I would think most of us are old enough to realize that. And especially if we have ADHD and we're forgetful, we're scattered with our thinking, knowing that mistakes are going to happen and hopefully not getting too discouraged by them. And also just challenging your inner critic. Like I was saying, how I asked myself, really, Renee, is anyone else worried about this but you? Does anybody else care about this? That's me challenging my own mind that's telling me it needs to be this way. This isn't good enough. This isn't good enough. And also just knowing that you want progress, not perfection. Progress, not perfection. Am I progressing? Am I doing what I want to be doing? Celebrating whatever steps you take, even if you're not at that final result. And that final result of where you think that mountain you're climbing, it might end up being on a different mountain. It might be a different place. Has that ever happened in your life where you start out going in one direction and then because you took those steps, you end up seeing another opportunity and you go another way and you never look and think, why didn't I end up in that first place? You're just glad that you got to learn what you learned along the way, met the people that you met. Everything in this little path of where you were going led you somewhere different, and that was fine too. And recognizing any positive things that come from part of that journey or the small wins that have been happening, even if you haven't reached some goal or achievement or something you once thought, this is what I want to do, this is where I want to be. That's okay, especially if you've changed tracks. There are things that I used to want to do, like I used to want to write a book. That was my thing as a young adult. I want to write a book someday. I want to be an author. I want to go speak at conferences. I had all these goals of things, and I would buy Parent Magazine because that was kind of your only resource. We didn't have internet. I'd buy Parent Magazine, or I'd read Parenting Magazine. I only had one subscription. Read the other one at the doctor's office, and I think, oh, wouldn't it be cool to work with moms and work together and teach them? And then I wanted to be a diet coach because I love dieting so much. I had all these ideas of what I wanted to do, a nutrition coach, like a Nutrisystem person, but I didn't ever do Nutrisystem. I always had these little dreams, and I'm not sad that I haven't done any of them because I don't want to do any of those right now. That's not where my life has led, and I don't feel any regrets for not doing that. But having those drives was fun in a lot of ways. It probably led me to research things that helped me, and I found, who knew? I never ever thought I'd be a yoga teacher. I didn't even really know what yoga was. Who knew how that happened? But I love that it happened because I love all the people I get to meet and the benefits I have from doing yoga, but all the people I get to be around and talk to and get to know. But back to the things that we just work on and don't do because we have this standard that we just think it's not good enough. Try to tell yourself that what you're doing is better than obsessing over making it perfect, obsessing over making it flawless. Sometimes you just need to recognize when it's time to move on and think this is fine. I can go back and change it later. Chances are you'll forget about it. You won't worry about it. You won't think, I got to correct that. I got to do that again. I got to do that again, or never get it done. So, and you may have heard the idea before of talk to yourself like you would to a good friend or your child or someone you love. Would you give them the same kind of criticism that you give yourself? And just put yourself in the place of another person looking at you, so your friend looking at you, and think, what would they think if they saw this? Not the thing of, oh, are they going to criticize? But if I ask them, what do you think about this? They'd probably look at it and not see all the little things that you're looking at. They'd probably think, wow, this is fantastic, because they're looking at it with these fresh eyes. They're not seeing all the little things. They're not hearing all the things that are in your head. I think back to a time that I went to visit a friend the first time I went to her house. It was a much bigger house, a nicer house, newer house than mine. Than mine. I'm not going to perfectionistically, see, I can't even say that word. I'm not going to crack that. I'm going to let this go. I don't want to give you podcasts that are hard to listen to, but I'm just going to let that go as an example to myself that sometimes I can do that. But back to my friend's house. So I go to see this friend, and she says, come on in, let me show you my house. And it wasn't like I was from out of town and I was visiting. I was just across the street at a Cub Scout activity, and saw she was in her yard, and she said, oh, do you want to see my house? And I said, yeah, I'd love to see your house. So it wasn't like she knew I was coming and she cleaned up for it or anything. But when I walked in the house, it was amazing. It was beautiful. All the rooms were big, a lot of white walls and things. I think I lived in an older house that had wallpaper and stuff. And it was just really pretty. And she had a view of the ocean. And, so I'm seeing everything with fresh eyes. She's seeing all the things she didn't get done. And as she showed me every room, she made a comment about, oh, yeah, I didn't put away that laundry, or I need to wash those windows. She saw all the things that I would see in my own house, actually, as I go room to room. She saw those things and said them out loud as we went room to room. And I noticed that everything that she said, I didn't notice, and I wouldn't have noticed unless she said it, which was fascinating to me because I think we all do that ourselves. We think all these things because we're so mindful of the full picture and our responsibility with it, when most people aren't going to notice any of it, especially if they're just there a little bit. And the truth of the matter is, most people aren't thinking about us as much as we think about ourselves. And so if we live our lives with some standard of trying to do something in a way that meets these high requirements of imaginary people or real people, then it's going to be disruptive to our lives, to our mindsets, to our emotional well-being. Another thing that is helpful to get yourself to do something that makes progress, even though it might not be perfect, is to set a timer. And I don't know if you've done that before, but you set a timer for 20 minutes or 30 minutes. And you may think it's going to take me hours to do this. And I've done things that take hours, they really do. But if I set a timer, and you can really just type in Google 30 minutes, and it will just start a 30-minute timer on your computer. And if you do that and think, for this 30 minutes, I'm going to get this done, and I'm going to be happy with the way that it is, and I'll either move on to something else unfinished, or I'll think as good as it gets. And a lot of times you'll be able to finish what you want and look at it and think, I'm not going to obsess about it. I'm not going to do any more. It's good enough. Maybe you allow yourself one little correction, but try not to go down that rabbit hole of again and again. I'm just going to do it one more time. I'm just going to do it one more time. I'm just going to do it one more time. I've seen myself doing that on Canva. Have you used Canva, where you can make different graphics and things? And I used it to build my website, and I change things every once in a while. And when I do, I'll find that I'll save the image to put on the website, and then I'll look at it there and I'll think, oh, I should probably change this. I should probably change this. I could, and it's not like it's a bad thing to make it better, but I'll end up with 30 different image files because of that. And I think this is filling up your computer, and then you have more to go through and try to make it so your computer doesn't go as slow. And maybe I need to be okay with something instead of continuing to update it, continuing to change it. Just let it be there. In fact, I wrote on my Facebook group, I don't know if you've been on there. It's a small group right now. But when I start having more courses and stuff, I want to have a place where we can go and talk about it. And you're welcome to join if you want. It's just the same name as my podcast, Inspiring Women with ADHD. But I have to have a banner, a Facebook banner, which is that wide, long picture at the top. And I made one, and then like a week later, I made another one, and then I made another one, and then I made another. And my daughter-in-law was the only one in the group. I had her go in the group. I said, see if it works to come into the group. And she went in. And it shows me how many people see the new image you put up. And I see, oh, she saw it again. I wrote to her and I said, yeah, you can see I keep changing it. I keep changing it. I keep changing it. Anyway, I changed it again a couple weeks ago because I decided to change all of the colors on my website. And I wrote on there that I was setting a goal not to change that for a whole year. I think that's what I wrote, because I gave myself a limit. Like, you cannot be a perfectionist about this anymore. You need to keep it here. You need to not worry about it. No one's looking at it that hard. They're not looking at it like, she should have done it differently, or why did she do that? I really don't look at other people's banners in their groups. And here I'm doing this and obsessing over it myself. So yeah, it's a thing. Last thing I want to say is I just used the word obsessing. And sometimes perfectionism can be a part of ADHD. It can also be a part of OCD, being OCD, and just thinking, oh, I got to do it this way. I got to do this. A compulsive behavior because something needs to be exactly a certain way. And even though ACDC. Even though ADHD has some overlaps with OCD, it's not the same. Although my psychiatrist, the first one I went to, I've had 3 different residents, told me that it's more connected to OCPD, obsessive compulsive personality disorder, instead of OCD. But I haven't found enough online to really validate that for myself. But the things that overlap between ADHD and OCD, and I could do another podcast about this to go into it a little more deeper, but the things that overlap are the anxiety that comes from the way our brains work, the inattention, the perfectionism, and addictive tendencies, the tendency to like really obsess and be addicted to things. The OCD has compulsive behaviors that go with it that aren't a part of ADHD. Also says obsessive thoughts. It must be a lot deeper than what we have, but we can have obsessive thoughts too. So anyway, that is it for today. I really appreciate you being here, listening. If I didn't have any listeners, would I still be talking? Probably, probably. But it makes me happy to know that some people are finding this valuable enough to continue listening. So thank you for being one of those people, because you just never know. You know, there are some people who are on podcasts who are well known to begin with, or have written a book, or do different things. And I'm just a person in my house who wanted to do this for a long time. And I'm finally putting the pieces together to make it happen. So thank you for supporting me in that way. And I mentioned on Monday, so the imperfections of life. So I mentioned on Monday's podcast that I had a quiz or a test, an ADHD test, that would be ready on Wednesday, October 1st. Well, this is 2024 if you're listening to this later. October 1st was actually Tuesday. So I realized, oh my goodness, I worked on it for so many hours, and it really got up, I think, yesterday. So that was October 2nd, which was neither Wednesday or October 1st. Or wait, today's Thursday. Okay, so it got up yesterday. Oh, it did get up on Wednesday. Yay for that. I do better when I have a calendar in front of me, and I don't right now. But yeah, I did get it going on Wednesday, but not on October 1st. But it is a first step. I have some ideas of what I want to do that will be fun for quizzes and to help us understand ADHD. And this is the first one. I just didn't know that the software that I bought to be able to do it was so technologically advanced. It wasn't just like, here's a template. It was literally like 100 options for each thing. And then here's 4 more things you have to do before you could do the next thing. And I thought, oh my goodness, what have I gotten myself into? Maybe I should have paid the $29 a month instead of a one-time fee. But I didn't want to pay $29 a month forever to have a quiz when I could just pay for the software. And it's a different software, but yeah, it's advanced. It's advanced. It challenged my brain for sure. But thank you for listening. Thank you for bearing with me in all my sharing, because that is one part of my ADHD, and I appreciate that you're not judging that. So I feel your support. I feel your love, because if you're still listening, then that's okay with you. But thank you so much, and I will be back next week. I'm back to 2 times a week, and I appreciate you being here. Oh, and if you want to find the quiz, I have it at the top of my website now. You don't actually even have to go to the programs page, but it's reneeallen.com, renee-allen.com. Feel free to write to me and give me any feedback on it. I'm not just seeking your approval. I'm just curious if it's working well for you. I'm trying to do the tests and stuff on it, but I go to the incognito window and all that, but we shall see. Talk to you later. Bye. Open windows, broken shadows. Frozen dreams are left for tomorrow. Without a cause. No time for a pause.
silence of sound has yet been found, but not by me.